You want to, you don't want your building looking like this. It's a pretty, it's a one extreme, but it's bigger than that, isn't it? It's buildings are your assets. They're going to outlive all of us here. They should do. So it's about building maintenance, really, in my mind, is, speaking especially, in terms of money, it's about protecting your assets and in the most economical way, about doing lots of keeping an eye on things, doing lots of little bits of work all the time to avoid that huge cost of a major repair. So just to distinguish, maintenance is lots of little things all the time. Repair can be a huge, $300,000 intervention because maintenance hasn't been done usually. So just that distinction, maintenance is keeping good order, and then bigger things we tend to terms of, repair and restoration, and that can lead into consents, resource consents and things. So it's a bigger issue. Lots and lots of variables, which makes it interesting. That's why I'm interested in this profession. I mean, just in materials alone, you've got concrete, you've got reinforced concrete, unreinforced concrete, you've got lime, you've got cement, you've got timber, concrete blocks, stone, and then you've got the problems with the iron. I mean, I think Robin put this in here. This is inside a cavity wall. You've got moisture in there. That's a iron tie, which is about to expand up to 11 times its original size, cracking the wall, moisture ingress. Infill starts falling down, that picture on the left. Now that's a bridge between the outside and internal skin. That's where salts and moisture can transfer. That's why you've got a stain on the inside of the wall. And, it's just so many parts to it. And, no two buildings are quite the same. So there's this really, I guess, a theme through this talk is really understanding your building and understanding defects, but also, purposely you address the cause, not the symptoms. That'd be a theme that's going through this all the time. And water is the common theme as well. I mean, all these materials, but really it's 95% of the time you're talking about water being the culprit of causing corrosion, salts, damp, rising damp, falling damp, healing, that sort of thing. So, move on to the next one. So I think it's going to go through, sources, talking about water being the main issue, and just going through, whether the main sources are. I mean, it's common sense that the roof and roof penetrations are absolutely critical. That's where the water comes from after all, most of it. Maintenance, regular inspections being absolutely critical. We'll go through the timing of that soon when we talk about maintenance plans. Just keeping an eye on things, but there's a lot going on. This picture here, there's been temporary repairs done, and there's a point where maintenance and little sort of patch-ups aren't quite enough. We do need to bite the bullet and realise you've got some major works to do, and a whole roof needs replaced, or internal gutters need replaced entirely to make it to be the cost-effective way. And I guess through maintenance, through keeping an eye on things, you want to know when that's coming. You don't want to be sprung with something, we've got to spend $250,000 and we've only just found out about it now. So through having a very good cycle of maintenance program, you should be able to, forecast these bigger expenses so you can plan for them. Just quickly, back to the variables, lots going on there, but one thing in particular, I don't know if you heard about dissimilar metals. You've got an iron corrugated iron roof there in contact with a copper tray. They are different metals and they react, and that speeds up the deterioration. Again, understanding causes of defects is really important, so you don't just keep on making the same band-aid repairs and they keep failing. Moving on, I think we're just going through how water is a culprit for everything. Penetrations, this is a skylight, obviously. To the top left-hand corner, I mean, the glass has just fallen in. I think it's a copper framing to this to the skylight, and I think they're just very simple clips which hold the glass and the Georgian glass in place. probably a 5-minute job to rectify that, but it might have been 7 years ago. And we might now have, rafters that are decaying and, the bottom plate and all those slates have to come off, the whole thing has to come out. And, the idea again, just a check at the right time, 5 minutes done. 10 years later, it's, tens of thousands of dollars. So getting up there and that regular access will save you money. And it should be part of a cyclic program. So, you're getting up there twice a year or whatever it may be. On to the next one, rainwater heads. Kind of out of sight, out of mind. You can't see that bird's nest. It's probably a seagull's bird's nest from the ground. Yeah, I mean, again, absolutely critical that someone's out there just checking these things probably twice a year. Story, I don't think they'll mind, but because it's so long ago, I'm talking about 130 years ago, First Church has been engaged there, surveying there. The entire roof had to be propped and dismantled only 30 years after construction, so we're talking about 1890 or something. All the roof members were rotten where they embedded into the timber walls. And it turned out what it was pigeons' eggs, and dead pigeons blocking up gutters, rainwater heads, and overflowing into the roof space, into the walls. And so it's 30 years to have to rebuild, a roof like that is, and that's simply what it was. There's no one, very difficult to inspect, and so that's the outcome of it. Another one, it's very obvious when you see pictures like this. But it's outside, out of mind. I mean, I won't say where this is, but it's very high up. You've got to preemptively go looking for these things. But that stone on the right has probably lost about 35 mil of its surface by being saturated and drying all the time, the action of salts, which blow apart the Oamaru stone. That flashing is I'd say that's not working anymore. So water's dribbling into that roof and probably has been for the last 8 years. So yeah, it's just got to keep checking these things. Another very simple one. It's a drain which is just blocked, sludge in the bottom there, and I think it's hard to tell with that, so it's a bit dark, but that's asphalt is probably increased in height around that as well, which is not helping. So a lot of that water's probably been directed down into the foundations there. I think Robin's notes on this one, there was a dripping gutter for, how simple is that? But yeah, add the element of time, you've probably got to replace, a couple of wall studs there that are rotten, as well as, baseboards and, and also make sure you fix the cause of the problem as well, the leaking gutter. So it seems really simple, all this, maintenance issues. And surely, it's pretty easy for everyone to understand the importance, but just looking around, and this is no comment to your buildings or, every household is the same. It's a little bit hard to understand why buildings are in such a state that they are. It's either the importance of maintenance isn't understood, or exactly what maintenance is, or there's a lot of other reasons why it doesn't happen. I suspect it's a combination of both, but it's often so simple. But now this one, I believe, was the first floor of a 2-story building, and it was actually a roof leak. So that's a story down where water has travelled. I think inside a brick cavity. And I don't know if you know that white sort of fluffy substance coming out of the wall there. Does anyone like to hazard a guess what that might be?
Is it a mold or some sort of salt?
Yeah, salts. Yeah, so that's salts and masonry is a big issue, mobilised by water, and suddenly they free to travel around, and where they dry, they expand and blow apart the surface or just under the paint. And you've got acrylic paint there, which is traps all moisture and just holds it there. Breathable coatings are a whole different issue, but again, water is the cause, and breathability is preferential with masonry. I mean, it's another example of not addressing symptoms, not the cause. I believe this used to be a timber floor with can't remember what Robin said the actual wall was, but basically you've got particle board over hiding the symptoms on the rotting boards, and then a lining has gone over the original wall. But obviously the cause hasn't been addressed at all, and that salt's again coming through from masonry through to timber. So yeah, again, just stressing the importance of understanding what the cause is. I mean, this is very common, foundation ground levels. Ground levels always seem to rise around buildings, particularly asphalt and pavements against or car parks. Something this is a concrete foundation, and suddenly, especially if you have masonry buildings with damp courses, if you go over the damp course, it's just a channel, a connection for moisture to get in and up the walls and rising damp. I think there's a multiple thing. There's a block drain here. There's a pipe leaking as well, kitchen sink, I think, and there's a danger to the ventilation. Subfloor ventilation gets blocked. So lots and lots of things, lots of combinations of things, but it's the really inspections and just fully understanding what you're looking at in the first place, you know. So on that front, I think you talk about wardens in Anglican Church, and I'm not entirely sure what their job description is, but if it's maintenance, then, you know, I think it's the key is having someone long-term who really gets to know their building or buildings incredibly well. And it's over time, it's the observations happening short-term that should become long-term. You really understand the fabric and then go, oh, what's going on there? I didn't see that a couple of months ago. There was a funny stain there or a different colour. And that's where you really get the, what buildings need. I mean, it's obviously typical, people move around in jobs all the time. But if you can have that continuity, and I guess also with the trades here, you obviously have specialists, you know, roof plumbers who do copper and lead, you have, you know, roof slaters. If they can also get familiar with a building, that's the ultimate. And back to money talks, that's where it was regular cyclic maintenance and people with a connection to the building with that knowledge. So that's where you're going to save an awful amount of money, and the building will last, you're protecting assets. Also making it safe, you know, I mean, there's a danger, you've got a duty of care to look after your staff, the public who are coming into buildings, and not being accusatory at all, but, you know, it's almost, duty of care is you can't neglect looking maintenance and keeping things in good order. So this is a very common thing. It's saying before about ground levels always rising. Really common with garden beds. They I guess just over time people plant, it looks lovely, and you put in grass clippings. You see that quite a bit. People mow the lawns and then they chuck the lawns, and just material builds up. And as I was saying before, it's really common to block subfloor vents. So, those little grills you see, which are underneath the floorboards, so that cross breeze or ventilation underneath timber floors is absolutely critical. I'm not saying that this is one. I'm not sure if, there could possibly be a concrete slab in there, but it's just really common. And also, of course, when you plant plants, the next thing is they want to be watered. So you can block up vents, you can bridge the damp course. So it's a connection for the groundwater to go up the walls. The damp course usually cuts that off. And then you're adding more water that's normally there by watering the plants. It's kind of a recipe for a problem, with rising damp. So it's something to be aware of. They're very simple stuff, but I believe this was underneath, talking about subfloor ventilation. I believe this was under one large room, and this is building rubble. So I guess it's just a bit slack by the original builders. I thought they could just get away with it and chuck it in there. Floor goes down, no one will see it. But it's quite extraordinary, and it's more common than you think. So you look underneath a building thinking, oh, it's going to be a good, 1.5 foot of vacant space for air to circulate and keep the timber dry, and it's full of rubble, which is not good, but maybe not so typical, but just another thing to be aware of. This is asphalt in town, where that's a windowsill. And I think probably over time, pavements get higher and higher and higher. I mean, scrape back a little bit, but generally it just gets higher. And then a couple of things there. You can never make it permanently watertight, the junction between the wall and the pavement. So water's always going to be feeding into there and dribbling down, capillary sort of action. And it can't really get out. If it's masonry, it's probably more porous than everything else, so it'll just get sucked in and you have damp walls inside. But also here, I think it's actually directing water running down the street into this sill, which is, it's pretty obvious that's not good. There's a lot of mold and fungi in this building. So I think I've already talked about this, the importance of understanding defects and treating the cause and not the symptom. I mean, one classic example is being called into someone and saying, we've painted this wall, 6 times in the last 2 years. It's just getting a bit ridiculous. That's not addressing the cause. It's addressing the peeling paint and trying to make it good aesthetically and not thinking beyond that. And it's obviously a leak, whether it's rising damp or falling damp from a gutter or something. You really need to make sure. And if you don't understand what's going on, just get outside help. And the problem could be a result of past work. Just being on the tools as a stonemason for 20 odd years, that's a huge part. A lot of what we were doing was correcting some mistakes done in the past, and not individuals' mistakes. It was just what wasn't known at the time. I mean, for instance, putting in iron cramps and pins. I mean, the Romans knew that they expanded and they put them within lead, and so they could sort of move and help them keep watertight. But I mean, you've got iron and finials. This is particularly with churches with the decorative finials, parapets, and that sort of thing. If you've got iron in there, and a giveaway, there's a bit of a crack, it just gets worse exponentially, if you like. So the crack is feeding in more moisture, that iron bar is expanding, and it will blow apart the masonry, whether it's stone or precast concrete. So, crosses on tops of churches, finials, parapets, it's pretty, that's just at the time didn't realise what the issue was going to be, 60 years down the track, but definitely 120 years down the track. So Marcus Wainwright, he's our main restoration stonemason in Dunedin. He will be going and core drilling out. They're very skillful with that iron rod or pin, and putting in a stainless one. Or it's moving into fiberglass now, which doesn't move as so much thermally. But so it was common practice. It wasn't one person's sort of thing, but absolutely disastrous for masonry. And something that's, if I could take a bit of time, it's fun, but I'll digress. Something interesting working in Australia for so long. Didn't we see many engineers about because earthquakes weren't an issue, so doing lots of maintenance work. But then in New Zealand, of course, they're everywhere and a huge part of any sort of major works with masonry buildings. But they've got a different approach to the, I think they even call them the parts. So all the ornamentation on buildings, which, as churches you've got a lot of, engineers are more concerned with low pass, the whole structure to the ground and seismic, the NBS ratings and sort of things. And the little bits and pieces, they don't seem to enter their calculations too much. And I've had to sort of go, hang on a minute, this is above a doorway, it's got a massive crack in it. I think this is probably your biggest concern. So I've spent a bit of time on that, but I think it's important. So again, your regular inspections, you'll see whether a crack is still tiny or suddenly getting, 2 years later, this is really opening up. There must be steel and corroding iron in there. Let's take it down or deal with it. So, yeah, so I guess technology moves on. We learn by our ways. We actually forget. So Romans knew better, and then we forget, and then back to where we are. Going to the next slide. So as far as how do you go about it? What are we talking about? Drawing up a checklist. You want to know what you're looking at and how often. So yeah, it's got an example there of daily routine. It's just checking taps and hoses are off and not dripping, and a weekly thing you can do. And this is definitely church wardens or people who are working in the building, and there's no expertise in this. It's just eyes, regular inspections. Taking a 5-minute walk around the building looking for problems, like I was saying before, like, what's that? It's a green stain. I don't remember seeing that. And just taking note of that. Monthly is, downpipes and gullies and, those sorts of rainwater heads and things. 6 monthly will be, leaves and gutters, rainwater heads, that sort of thing. So all of these are pretty non-skilled. It's just someone who knows the building is just doing it. And we get to the bigger things, like got to be a bit careful with, I think this is later in the talk, but safety. In terms of getting up on roofs regularly, you really need to make sure that that's done safely. I mean, it's common sense, but a lot of buildings still haven't, they weren't designed for maintenance. So it's real consideration, and I think something to be mindful of when you do come to do a major works. You look to, the scaffold up, it's costing a lot of money. You do look to improve access for future maintenance, whether it's a clip-on harness system, whether safety attachments for skilled people to go up there, whether it's a hidden safety rail, so you can actually pop out of an access hole when you're completely safe. But that is really important. So I guess what I'm getting at, a lot of the simple stuff, the daily, weekly, monthly, that can be, no skills involved there potentially, and it can be people who work in the building all the time, or wardens. But then, getting into sort of more advanced things, it's bringing in the skilled contractors, and then the 5-yearly inspection, which I was talking about before. So that's called the quinquennial. I don't know if you're familiar with that expression. That's where everything is looked at in a lot of detail. So a bigger building, a cherry picker, a crane box survey, and just looking at absolutely everything. And that's where you really do pick up something that's just been missed, and then it's a chance to re-evaluate your current maintenance plan. You're doing all these things, and you might have a priority which is 2 years and 5 years, and think, we'll be doing this in 10 years' time. But having that regular 5-year, very close look, you realise, oh gosh, this has actually got a lot worse than we thought. We have to bring that forward, and you've got to try and keep track of being able to budget the bigger sort of repair works. I want to talk more about the quinquennial. Oh yeah, there we go, quinquennial. So so in the UK, Church of England, it's a legal requirement that this quinquennial or 5-yearly inspection is done, which I think is absolutely brilliant. So it's just a reset. Even though you've been doing the little things all the time, it's getting up really close. So this is where you're talking about, a heritage professional who likes us, or anyone else with the same qualifications and experience. So it's not getting your roofer to go up and, while you're there, can you look at this? It's really having the professional building surveyor have a look at everything, and it's about resetting, identifying your priorities and condition again, and rejigging your cyclic maintenance program, the stuff you do every month and 6 months. And look, it might be proving it's exactly how we thought. Our cycle maintenance is working, things aren't getting worse, great. But it's just a really necessary thing to do. Yeah, so what's the small print there? So yes, generally it will be a condition assessment that comes out of this crane box survey or cherry picker, or use of drones. That's another important thing, which does help get around safety issues as well. The access, you're identifying urgent, like this really needs to happen now. Someone's going to get hurt if that, finial falls off. Works that are needed within 12 months, and then generally sort of within 2 years, and then within 5 years, works that need to be done. And then on that 5th year, you're looking at another survey to see where things are at. And some of these actually even sort of forecast into within 10 years, you're looking at maybe replacing a roof or a whole tray internal gutter or something. So about planning, about understanding condition, and planning is budgets and knowing where you are financially with your building, what you need to put into it in terms of over a 5-year and 10-year period. So it's all about. It does mean, unfortunately, all of it comes down to money nowadays, isn't it? And where your priorities are. So can't stress that importance enough of that quinquennial one. Look, consents I won't go into too much, but building consents, resource consents. Basically, if you're just doing maintenance, which sort of talks about, you're generally talking about like-for-like replacement, which I'm sure is you're replacing a slate roof with slate, copper gutter with a copper gutter. It's the same materials, traditional methods. Then that won't trigger the need for a resource consent if your building's scheduled on the district plan. If you're looking to make big changes and alterations, additions to a scheduled building, and Heritage New Zealand will get involved too, then that's a resource consent. Heritage New Zealand will have to advise the council, and you have to work through with them. But just talking about maintenance, you shouldn't be triggering a resource consent. I guess it's the purpose of it, really. So I think we're just going to go through a lot of simple do's and don'ts. So how are we going for time, Andrew?
It's 22 roughly.
Yeah, okay. I could run through these quite quickly and get some questions. So talk about health and safety, that's critical. Drone, actually that's an important thing. Drones are great. Having a really good look at a high access, high level roofs and things, but then it's not as good as being on there and tapping and being able to feel and hear what does something sound like when you tap it, but still very, very useful. Asbestos, under the Safety at Work Regulations 2016, you need to have a asbestos survey done, which identifies if you've got asbestos in the building, where it is, and have a plan. So a lot of people still aren't aware of that, even though they're sort of 8 years on. Building services, I guess that's plumbing, electrical stuff. That's something that we'll engage, if we do a condition assessment, we'll engage the specialist in to look at that, because it's a specialist field. So I can go on to the next slide.
So I'm sorry, so you're saying building services, get a specialist in for your
I mean we're not trained electricians, so we can't really comment on. We'll comment on something which we think appears to be strange or something, but it's definitely I think Ron was putting that in, that's a separate but important thing. So this is just cleaning out rainwater fittings. This is all about water, isn't it? Great thing to do, very important to walk around your building when it's absolutely hammering down, when it's raining, get a rain jacket and umbrella, and just look at where the water goes, every gutter, downpipe, and that's where you understand so much. I won't even talk about that photos, but it's not really doing anything there. That pipe is, the discharge hole is still tiny. They're putting a huge PVC pipe beneath it doesn't actually make it drain any quicker. On to the next slide. Vegetation, it's a pretty obvious thing. Although it might look pretty, look, it's probably not worth letting things grow in your buildings. There are some plants which, you know, the roots don't really do much, but it's probably better just to keep them away, get the ventilation, get the air, let them breathe. Now I'll go to the next one. Air vents, talk about them, just keeping them clear, keeping soil levels down around buildings, look for where the damp courses are. Ideally, the ground should slope away from your building, and even having a French drain, which is basically a gravel-filled trench with a drain coil in the bottom of it, around the perimeter of the building, actually helps them, this is a masonry building, helps it breathe, and actually is very, very, very effective in helping dry out walls. Surprisingly, you know, in a matter of months, it's very simple.
They did that with All Saints in Dunedin.
Yes.
Made a huge difference.
Yes, I'm aware of that one. Yeah. So that's another very simple thing. This is what I was going on about before with my masonry background. It's so typical. Is that a cross? What is that? It's a masonry, huge piece of masonry to kill someone was really just to fall off because you've got corroding iron bar in there. That's just expanding. Like I say, once there's a crack there, that's feeding water in, which exacerbates it, which the corrosion gets worse. And so really important to keep an eye on those. And the only way you can do that is by regular inspections. And that's where the 5-year ones will pick that up. Don't pressure wash. A lot of masonry is very soft bricks. This is ormolu stone. It just, you could cause 80 years of weathering in an afternoon for someone with a water blaster. And then that salt's coming out, which is introducing more water. Don't paint old masonry. This is acrylic paint. Just trapping. So if you've got a damp wall, you put acrylic paint on. There's only one way that water can go, and that's inside. So you'll have blistering paint on the inside. It will get through on the acrylic paint, but it's pretty tough stuff. It's like a coat of plastic. You see that huge bubble coming down the arch there, and I think the lower photo is hard to see, but it's really difficult, but it's already been done. A lot of buildings in town have just got layers and layers and layers of acrylic paint, and you know, they might be ormolu stone buildings, but they're almost no longer masonry buildings. They're kind of plastic buildings, and the walls are wet inside. The moisture just can't get out, so it's a bit of a difficult problem. That top right is actually sealant on there, as well as cement pointing. The sealant, same sort of thing, the moisture can't get out until it blows the whole surface of the stone off. So don't seal. Masonry buildings need to breathe, should be using lime mortar, not cement. But I could talk to you for hours about this, but I won't. So just a few things there. Right, so any questions? Sorry, that was a bit sort of million miles an hour, having not gone through it before, but I hope there's some aspects there that you followed, and any questions you want to ask.
So I can see some there from Caversham. We've got fabulous old buildings that have all sorts of water issues in them, including the blistering paint inside. I can recall seeing with the water behind it. And Penny, the Matthews would be similar issues, wouldn't it, as well? Any questions for Andrew here?
I have one. On an old tile roof, 1920s.
Slate roof?
Tile. Orange, lovely orange terracotta tile. So one piece of advice was covered in lichen, essentially, or a lot of lichen. One piece of advice was don't touch it. It's not leaking at the moment, and if we do anything to it, we could likely induce water ingress. Another piece of advice is it needs to be cleaned. All that lichen needs to be cleaned off.
No, interesting, isn't it? I'm quite a fan of, in certain times, doing nothing is actually an okay strategy until you fully understand the causes and what you're trying to achieve. But look, a little bit of lichen's fine. If it does become very thick and heavy, it's holding moisture. It will speed up the decay of the tiles, and their surface suddenly becomes porous. But the key is using the right right thing to kill so there's some biocides, but there are some which are basically bleach, and they introduce salts and all sorts of really damaging things. So you can really cause more damage by using the wrong biocide. But there are some very good ones. There's one here made in New Zealand, Wet and Forget. That's interestingly was recommended in Australia by the conservation architects there. It's the best specifications, use Wet and Forget from New Zealand, and it's for masonry. It's proven there's nothing in there which will introduce salts or cause problems. So yeah, so Wet and Forget would be fine, but if it's not really thick, you might not need to do anything yet, because another thing is it will grow back, and you will have to redo it every 2 years or so, or 2 to 5. So it's case by case. Yeah. But it's very, very thick, and your roof is green, and it's getting heavy and it's holding moisture. So I'd recommend getting rid of it then. Yeah.
Thank you. It was really helpful. Can I just follow up on the bio side?
Yeah.
We're having at St Matthew's, we're having our scaffolding around our tower this coming week. We've got some money from the DCC to put a waterproof coating on the roof of the spire, which is long overdue and most welcome. We've at the same time, we've got some little ferns that are growing out of the cracks in the side of the tower, and we thought we'd take the opportunity to apply some biocide. Clearly, not all biocides are created equal. Would something like Roundup be okay, or?
No, biocide will kill little ferns and things, but
yeah,
I guess back to the advice to make sure you're addressing the cause and not the symptoms. So the plant growth is really the symptom that the masonry is really wet. So probably you need to be looking at the top of the wall and the capping, whether it might be a mortar capping or stone, I'm not sure, however that wall finishes, and it's highly likely that it's cracked and needs repairing. That's where the water's getting in, and also pointing, all the mortar in and around probably needs to be redone to stop driving rain getting in. Lime mortar is what you need to use in traditional older buildings, stone buildings and brick, but it will let some moisture in, but it equally lets it dry out. So it's not like a waterproofing on the surface, but obviously where it's missing, there's big holes that will be letting in too much water. So you've probably got a wall which is quite wet. So just killing that plant is just addressing the symptom, not the cause. So I meant to say before, without sounding like a salesman or whatever, look, feel free to approach us and say, Andrew, do you mind just coming out and having a look at this? Because look, for a first visit, we won't charge you anything. It's just we can point in the right direction, and if it turns into something bigger, then we'll deal with that then. But as far as just helping out in terms of observations, I'm happy to come out and have a look. I'm based in Dunedin, and it takes, having lived in Melbourne, it only takes 5 minutes to get anywhere, so it's not an hour and a half. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I guess we've got an Equus coating going on the roof of the spire, and our assumption is that the water is coming, in through the roof, and then it's just tracking downwards.
What's the roofing material? What's it made of?
It's a wash, some sort of old-fashioned plaster.
Is this internally?
No, external.
Okay.
It's built 1867. And there's a slate roof on the church, but the spire on the bell tower it looks like plaster to my mind.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I'm suggesting it's probably, looking at the plaster repairs and the mortar generally and cracks, and trying to have that first point of water protection looked after. Yeah. And again, that's keeping an eye on when you're going around in the quinquennial surveys, just the level of cracking. And actually one thing I didn't talk about is keeping really good records. And it's a little bit tricky when people come and go, you know, either the consultants you bring in or contractors and, you know, wardens and, you know, the buildings are around for several lifetimes, and so who holds onto that knowledge? It can be, I've found out buildings generally can go through really good periods of having a great team, great maintenance, it's looked after, one person retires, someone else moves on, and then suddenly nothing might happen for 20 years, and then all sorts of things arise and things get very expensive very quickly. So keeping a track of those records and where do they sit, without going too far, I think there's a case for somehow records to be attached to the physical building. It sounds old-fashioned, you're not having a hard copy sorts of things, but you know, there's so much information around and where's it held, and the amount of times I've gone, well, what's happened here before? It's like, systems change, we don't know anymore. Right, let's start from scratch. And it's such a shame. There's a lot of knowledge which has gone on in buildings. So just internally, something to think about. How do you record? And it's no good getting professionals in like myself and a report's done and it just goes on a shelf. Read it once, goes on a shelf. Right, we should be all good for 10 years. So I don't know, there's got to be a place where people know how to find things and it's a live document and you go back, photos are key. You go back, what did this look like 2 years ago? What's happening here? Oh, it's gone, it's really green now. It wasn't before. I thought I was right, but you've got the photo from, October 2022. Something's up here. We need to look further. But it's all about keeping those records somewhere. It's all observation. It's all about, and over time, you get to be very good at picking up tiny details which are clues to what's going on. And that's what you need to do, catch it before it turns into a massive problem, So sorry, I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Anything else before we?
And I just a question for I think for both of you to some extent, from Kit. He asked, should churches be encouraged to have maintenance within their budgets, or should we be building reserve maintenance funds? Or should we be doing both?
Well, if I could answer it a different way, I think you just absolutely critical you have funding for cyclic maintenance, which is just carrying out all those things I was talking about. Without that, it's a very dangerous game. You're sort of, I guess, be proactive rather than reactive. Let's try not to spend any money for 6 years and then hope everything's okay and then go, oh gosh, we've got a major problem now. It's costing $90,000. Whereas we dealt with it 6 years ago, it would be, a $5,000 fix. So critical to having money, and that's a difficult thing. Where does the funding come from? Not only the cyclic day-to-day, month-by-month things, but booking in that 5-yearly inspection, depending on your building, like an average church, you've got a high roof, a tower or steeple or something, you will need some sort of access machine, a big cherry picker or a crane box survey. And so that's, out of my head, that's, $2,000-3,000. And then an afternoon with someone like myself going around. So if you can have that budgeted in every 5 years, there needs to be that lump sum there. And I think that's the key to it all, really. But I'm not where that money comes from.
I'd always recommend budgeting for it.
And
the thing is that those sorts of funds can risk getting raided because money is tight and other things are going on. But I think, if you can build something up, it can handle the times when you do need to spend more to have a good look. And of course, there are, as some of you like Penny and Caversham, that there are some funding organisations you can go to, like the City Council, who are actually really helpful when it comes to providing support for some of this kind of maintenance stuff.
Absolutely.
But again, you don't want to rely on that. Best to have something where it's budgeted in, and you're not actually getting a grant for something because everything's fallen off because it's it's gotten to such a state. But they certainly can be very helpful for organisations that aren't flush with money. We might be rich with assets, but we don't necessarily have lots of cash flying around.
I mean, another one. I mean, it's kind of difficult to. I come across clients who occasionally come up with these names of funds I've never heard of before, and it's it can be quite a time-consuming job to find out about all these funds, and some of them quite little, but they're really regular. And if you're eligible or not. But yeah, there are a lot of funds out there. Heritage New Zealand's another one if you're a listed building, but unfortunately they haven't got very deep pockets, and probably with the current government even less. But Dunedin Heritage Fund is
useful.
It is, but it's generally, if you're lucky, you get half the cost, as a sort of rough guide. But yeah, they've got a decent fund in there annually. I think it's about $670,000, which they try to make sure there's a good proportion of $5, $10, $15, $20,000 ones, and a few more. But it's a decent pool, and yeah, I'd encourage you definitely to look into that.
And you don't have to be a listed building.
No,
to access.
No, that's right. And it's they have four rounds a year. So yeah, I'd really sort of encourage you to look at that. But without the expectation you're going to get money every time. It's just depending on how many applicants there are. But they'll want to see a plan too, and it's not just I think it's helpful. It's not just a reactive thing. And well, is that really your priority? Or might come to your building and go, I think you should be dealing with that. So, let's hold off on giving you any money. Do you understand your building? What are your priorities? Where are you going with it? So the better organised you can be, then, I think the more that you can impress the funders that their money is going to a good place. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.